Mike, in the book of Hebrews, chapter number 10, there's a couple of verses that one we quote all the time, but we don't quote the one in front of it. In verse 24 and 25, it says, "And let us be concerned for one another in order to stir up love and good works." That's the part we don't often quote. We know real well the second part, which says, "Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging, and so much more as you see the day coming near." The context is that we assemble ourselves together out of concern for one another in order to stir each other up with our edifying love and encourage each other to good works. I have a question that I think we need to answer. We've discussed this a little bit. This is probably the most prep we've done for a show. We normally are not too well prepped. And that is, in Yeshua's overall plan for the building and constructing of his body, it wasn't just a near future experiment in his mind, but a long term, even into our day and beyond. Did he die for a digital only community? Or are we missing something, failing in some respect, or actually just evolving and becoming an online viewership as opposed to a local gathering of assembly? Now that I've laid that out there, I'm going to kind of sit back and just hear your wisdom on this subject.
Okay. So I want everybody to take note of this time, April 19th, that you heard it first from Barry Phillips, that did Messiah die for a digital body? I don't want to just run over that one. That this is something that I think that we need to definitely look at right now, because what is coming about because of this. And to go back and quote Hebrews, as so much the more as you see the day approaching, that is an admonition placed there to us in this generation, Barry, because the Almighty could foresee what was going to be happening in the future. So there is this attitude, well, they're going to live stream it, so I don't really need to go. The teaching is only part of why we gather together, or at least it should be. I've been Life Assembly is now been going on for about a year and a half now, and I've seen a remarkable thing happen. The health of your congregation is not actually determined during the service, but after the service.
Mm-hmm.
When people don't want to leave. If everybody scatters like a bunch of scalded dogs immediately after the last amen or the Aaronic blessing or whatever, there's no health there. There's no community there. And so this whole concept of digital, we had to have that for a while. It was much needed during the past years that we've gone through. But if that has become our norm, we're in trouble. We're in big, big trouble.
I remember, as you're describing that, I remember the days of pastoring, especially my last church. We had a particular benediction that we used, and I would start the benediction, and then while the congregation continued with it, Laura and I made a very rapid exit down the middle aisle and went and stood by the main exit door to shake hands with everybody and say, "File by," because if I got caught at the front at all, 90% of the congregation was gone before I could get to the back door.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't take, but the whole exit process only took about 20 minutes at the most. And that was just, a few people lingering in the aisles and talking. But the vast majority of people, especially on Sunday morning, they're in a rush to get home, either to eat dinner at home or to head to the restaurants. We start at 2 at House of David. We are there early to go through the music and set up things that, for various purposes. But sometimes it's 7:30 before we're leaving. And there have been occasions where I'm exhausted and I start flicking the lights. Okay, guys, I love you, but it's time to go home. I'm wiped out. Thankfully we're at a point now where other folks say, y'all go, we got this, and we can leave, and others will take care of closing up. But you're right, Mike. There is this crescendo moment, perhaps, in the preaching of the word. That should have top priority above any and every other thing. But the edifying of the body, over the last couple of years, especially in prayer pertaining to our gatherings, that's one of the top things I'm asking. Father, enable us to edify one another. Because, you come in and you got your stuff. People have life experiences that are in need of encouragement and some help and some prayer and some love to get through.
Yeah, I know you have a couple of people right now at your congregation that have gone through some very serious things.
We have one of my elders, his father just passed after 15 years of dementia. It's a two-sided coin. There's some relief for the family, but at the same time, it's life lost. Yeah. And there's that process of absence and loss that needs to go through. Others have very, very engaging, consuming family issues that are going on. What do they need? They can't, and for this reason, I'm thankful that we have an online presence and that they can't be there physically, and so they watch. But these are also people I know that, if possible, they're going to be present. Yeah. Because what happens inside the room among the body is too important to sit home and say, I'll skip that part and just get the online verbal part and be done. So are we becoming at some points an online community out of convenience or out of necessity?
Well, I think it's multifaceted, of course. First of all, intimacy has been lost. The lockdown and all of those things, and whatever conspiracy box you want to put that in, I'm not really interested in. I'm not saying that directly to you, but anybody else. I don't really care about all this. I look at what happened to people. They lost the ability to relate to one another. And they lost the ability to relate to God in a meaningful way. Now, what do I base that on? I've been out traveling recently, and overall, what I've seen is people have lost many people. I can't put all. I don't want to put everybody into this. But there is a large number of people who have lost the ability to worship. I don't think they did this on purpose. But if you're watching an online service in your living room, in your jammies, which is also called your Walmart clothing, if you're sitting in your living room watching a worship service, you're probably not going to enter into it. You're not going to be standing. Very few people will be standing in their living room actually entering into that worship service. They will be sitting in the recliner. I would be. If I'm not there, it's just different dynamic, okay? But now that things have changed, that same dynamic of sitting back and watching more as a spectator is something that has not been, it's there. And it's something that we are going to have to deal with and kind of pull people out of that spectator mentality. The audience stage. People are watching a worship service online very similar to the way that they're watching their favorite sitcom.
No,
You don't enter into emotionally, hopefully you don't enter into, I know some do, but hopefully you do not enter in emotionally and spiritually with the sitcom. And so what's been given up here? That intimacy, that ability to relate to people, the ability to relate to people is something that is not just COVID. I've seen this in other aspects also.
So if we're watching online only, two thoughts here. One is we are more apt to be evaluating than participating.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at, well, I see, so who's there and who's not there. If the camera includes a vantage point other than one person. At House of David, it's only the person speaking, and we're not showing the audience. But at times there are more people. Well, part two, there are more people who view online than there are in the room, and that's not always the case. But I mean, there are situations where, a variety of issues keeps people from being able to attend that would otherwise normally be there. Things happen, and we get that. The other part of that, Mike, is that there are people who are isolated and they have nowhere else to go. They don't have a Hebraic root congregation anywhere within driving distance. And due to their isolation, they find what they can online out of necessity, because that's what they have. I find it very humbling and very honoring that we have people who watch outside the country. In various other places. And I never want to take that for granted. And I don't want to overlook that. I'm very, very thankful. There are many occasions, and I have one of my elders will mention this quite often, is that, there were how many views they were from the previous week. And sometimes it's 3 or 4 times what we had in house. So I don't want to throw away throw off on in any way those who watch online, because I'm very appreciative of that. At the same time, if you have an ability to participate in a local community of belief, I think it is vital that you do so. And you might think to yourself, well, I just don't get anything out of it. The other side of that coin is, who is missing what you have to offer?
Yeah.
When you walk into a group setting, according to what Rasul encouraged us to, as he wrote to the Corinthians, when you show up, do you have a word? Do you have a prophecy? Do you have a tongue? Do you have a prayer? Do you have a song? What is it that you bring to contribute? Again, I can only reference House of David. When folks come in, normally they're carrying a crock pot of something.
Yeah.
We have crock pot alley, for our oneg. And it smells wonderful. Sometimes it's kind of hard to keep teaching because the aroma of the food is beginning to wave through the congregation. We try to keep that door closed so that we don't become distracted, but that door is only so thick.
Yeah. And it's also got banana pudding in back of it.
Sometimes if Miss Leslie shows up or Miss Joyce with the banana pudding. But the idea is, Mike, they're coming and they're contributing. Well, it's not just the food. You know, there were times that people, I had a dream, I had a vision, the scripture came out to me. I felt I was supposed to encourage our congregation with this understanding. It's helpful that when you start into the Torah portion, if that's what you're doing, the people have actually read it before they get there, and that they have a question or a comment or an insight. Those things contribute to the body. I used to show up, I blew the shofar to open, I lit the menorah, I led the worship, I did the teaching, I did all of the praying, and it functioned, it worked. And I know I can do all those things.
Yeah.
But the Father spoke to me, said, son, it's time for you to lift other people up. Yeah. Take things off and give it away and lift other people up by giving them opportunity to participate. And at times I still need to do that. I need to give more stuff away. It's about building up, edifying, growing, mentoring, training, and equipping. It says in Ephesians, Mike, that we are to, if I can get there real quick, Ephesians chapter 4, that we are joined together and knit together, and that we are to come to unity of belief. It says that in verse over in chapter 2 that we are built upon the foundation of the emissaries and the prophets. We're building. Yeah. We're coalescing and putting together people. You have to. I'm thankful for the pastors that let me practice preaching in their pulpits, because I could sure take a good thought and take it into left field real quick. But, they knew that I wouldn't do anything that would destroy their congregation or that they couldn't fix with a simple instruction. I have to be willing to do the same to allow other people a chance to lead and make their mistakes the way I still do. My wife will point me out real quick. Did you have to use that story again? Did you have?
Sometimes you do.
Well, it fit the moment, darling. I was under the anointing. Leave me alone.
Right. What we're talking about, Barry, is a lot of it is just symptoms. Okay. People don't come because they don't feel like they're needed. And I cannot.
Well, say that again.
Okay. People don't show up because they don't feel like they're needed. You've heard me say on our Connect to Israel tour, it's not just that you need to see Israel. Israel needs to see you. Every person that's part of a congregation has something.
Yeah.
It may be a small piece, okay? But this would be like building a brick house and one of the bricks saying, I'm not really needed today. That house is going to come down. It's the what is that game? The Jenga thing? You take something out, you take something out. Maybe your absence is the last block that's going to cause the thing to crumble. And I know that I can talk to people that are saying, well, I just don't feel. Yeah, you don't feel like. Well, let me say this very gently. You need to get over yourself. Because if you don't feel like you're needed, then maybe it's just that you're holding yourself back. I can only encourage people to be involved to a certain level. I can't make them be involved. They're going to get mad then and leave. But if somebody's encouraging you to be involved and you're like, well, I'm leaving because I'm not going to be. There's an issue with you. Maybe it's not the issue with the congregation. Maybe it's your issue that needs to be dealt with. But Barry, again, these are symptoms. And I believe that in a way that COVID only exasperated something that was and revealed something that was already there. let me pick on a group of people I normally don't pick on. Homeschool. Now, I believe in homeschool. There's no doubt. I mean, I believe in parents involving themselves. I know that not all parents can do this, but parents being involved in the schooling, the education of their children. Sometimes you might have to send them somewhere. That's fine, but don't disconnect. Okay. You hear me say anything negative about the concept, but there is a problem. And that is, I've watched many homes, and this came from not really from me. This came from Daniel, because he was homeschooled for a certain amount of time, and has been around a lot of youth. He said the tendency for homeschool children is they're not taught how to be social.
Mm-hmm.
They walk into a car, and this is not just homeschool now. This is society wide. That young people walk into a congregation and never greet anybody. They just sit down. Why is that? Because they see the adults doing the same thing. You walk into a room and don't greet anyone. You just go into your little corner. You know, here's a story, Barry, that I've never told online. I never told this story, I don't think. Period. So first to hear it here. I was 6 years old. I was an only child. Still am. Only children have issues. The same as families, you know, with multiple children. You all have issues. We all have our different issues.
I don't.
Yeah. Except for, yeah. Well, can I get Laura on here for just a moment?
No.
Okay. All right. So I was not taught well how to socialize. And I remember there was some kids in a house around the corner from me, and I was going to go over there and play. My mom had said I could go over there and play. Well, next door to us was a couple. They were not related, but I called him Uncle Ray, and she was Aunt Hattie, and they were very close. I'd go over there and watch Flipper on Sunday evenings. And I remember one day leaving my house, I had to go through his yard, in front of his garage, through his yard to get over to the people that I was going to be playing with. As I went by him, he said hello, and I just went by him. Never said a word. I just went by. Well, later in the day, I walked up to him and I said, "Hi, Uncle Ray, how are you doing?" He said, "Why should I talk to you? You didn't talk to me." Barry, that moment had such an impact on my life that I dishonored him. If I walk into a room and I do not greet the people that are in the room, I have dishonored them. I was at a place, I can't say where, not long ago, maybe long ago. I'll kind of, cover it up with that. But they had a time of greeting. You got the song and, let's all walk around and greet each other. I was this guest speaker and only one person came up to me. I'm standing there by myself. As everybody's greeting each other, I'm standing there by myself. It's like, wow, can be alone here. Barry, what we saw in COVID just revealed something. We don't know how to honor each other by making each other feel important. If I walk into a room and you're there and I don't come over and say, "Hi, Barry, how you?" I have said, "Barry, you're irrelevant in this room to me." After you, sir.
Well, you don't know how much you need people until you need them.
Yeah.
When we think about the early believers that are written about in the scriptures, they were vital to each other. they were persecuted, they were imprisoned, they were isolated and ostracized, excommunicated from their communities. Those that came out of pagan societies, such as in the Greek cities that were written to, when they chose to walk in a Hebraic belief and were choosing a Jewish Messiah, we cannot in our day appreciate what that did to them socially.
Mm.
I mean, that suddenly the vendors that they bought meat from and the markets that were readily known to have brought food in or meat in from idol shrines, they didn't patronize those guys any longer. And it was just the way that they invited people to their home or didn't invite people to their home. All of that was at cost. Especially
Absolutely.
in America, we don't understand that, as we have, even in a spiraling downward society in many respects, we are still a religiously appreciative community in this nation. It's understood people go to church on Sunday, and weirdos go to some assembly on Saturdays, and in their estimation, if you share your belief with some, oh, you're Jewish. Well,
or Seventh-day Adventist.
Or 7 day, it gives you an opportunity to explain your belief to some level of their understanding. So there's at least an appreciation. We may come to a time where it is much more costly to walk as we believe. And that day, we will need each other far more than merely connecting online. Again, I understand that there are people that for them, online is their best opportunity, either because of where they're located and I've been thinking about this since we got started on this topic. Not everybody has the worldview and life understanding that we do from our generation. There are other generations that were raised in a completely different manner and life experience. Those who have been born in late 90s, early 2000s certainly have a different understanding of life than where you and I came out of. Yeah. So I can't judge them for not thinking the way I do or seeing things the way I do. I have to be willing to understand where they're coming from. Those that have been raised even beyond that, born later than the early 2000s, again, their whole world is different than mine. So they use a completely different set of filters, and I have to be willing to understand they are much, much more technically connected. We criticize, especially our younger part of our community, with being so absorbed in their phone that they don't know how to verbally connect with one another. When I was doing youth ministry, and you had to add in a section of the event just for kids to hang out and talk, because that's what they want to do more than anything else. With the advent of the cell phone, that part of their life structure really went away in large degree. And you can see it in a restaurant. You can see it, in group settings. People sitting at a table, putting food in their mouth and looking at their phone instead of talking to the person right across from them. Adults are, as our age group, we're as guilty as anybody. It can happen.
Yeah. So don't blame the snowflake. Look to the cloud that produced it.
Very true. So it becomes a crutch. It becomes a means of escape. It's more comfortable in your own personal isolation where you're not challenged. But I think the scriptures, it leads us to a place where a single piece of iron cannot sharpen itself. It has to have something to rub against.
It does.
And we need each other. So I'm hoping that what we're discussing today would encourage people, get out of your living room on the day of your gathering, if at all possible, and make the effort to at least show up and try. You can't live in isolation only. Phone calls do not replace face-to-face conversations.
Yep. You get to your congregation, remember the verse that says it's better to give than to receive. So if you're doing anything in life to receive, you're going to come out in the end a little bit empty. Go there to give. Be a part of people's lives. There's nothing greater than that. You know, I was just in Wilkesboro, North Carolina this past weekend working with the youth, young adults, and it was wonderful to watch them. Yeah, they were on their phones. Hey, I was checking my phone once in a while too. Yeah, got it. But this group of young people that I was working with, they wanted to interact with one another. They wanted to sit and talk. They wanted to be a part of each other's lives. I was so encouraged by that. And speaking of opportunities, Barry, okay, time to announce it. You and I, June 2nd and 3rd, will be, I don't know where it's at. I think it's somewhere around Martinsville, something like that.
It's just outside of the city of Martinsville. Martinsville in Henry County is the generally accepted term. A lot of little communities in around Martinsville is the township that is there. So this is in South Central Virginia, right on the border of North Carolina. It's about an hour south of Roanoke, where there's an airport if someone to fly in.
Okay.
It's about an hour north of Greensboro, North Carolina, again, where there's an airport if you want to fly in.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to be at a conference. Actually, my sister Leanne is orchestrating this, Kingdom Treasures Old and New, and she's basing this off of Matthew chapter 13, verse 44 and verse 52. It's a Friday evening. It begins at 6:30, and then 10 to 4 on Shabbat. Discovering hidden gems of scripture in preparation for the kingdom. You've got a flyer up on your Facebook page. I have it up on mine, and registration forms are now available. I'll post those as well. But Mike, you and I haven't done a conference together in a while.
It's been a while. Now, is the rumor true, Barry, that on Sunday there's going to be a bus tour of Grassy Creek?
I don't know. You can get a bus in there and get it turned around. There's nowhere to turn a bus around.
All right. And one more thing, people want to go ahead and get registered. Revive is coming up the end of June in outside of Nashville, Tennessee, in Franklin, Cool Springs at I think the Marriott there. So that's a lot of great things happening, Barry. Let's take it as a time to be proactive about going against the digital body and coming back to being a body once again.
Let me finish by saying to those that have whatever the issue is, that it's trauma, it's isolation, it's whatever it is that's keeping you from reconnecting. We're not throwing stones at you today. We're offering to you an open door, and we encourage you, connect us. If you're looking for a place and don't know where one may be, it could be that we can find a place for you. Maybe, and we haven't touched on this, maybe you've been in a situation where it didn't work out. There was a bad experience of some sort. We cannot allow a bad experience to keep us locked down and and tucked away. May Yah
Well,
open
maybe
up.
that's the program itself.
There's another program, but we need healing in the body. We need restoration in the body. And that's what we're praying and asking Yah for.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing on your social media pages. Thank you to all who watched 2 weeks ago. We took a week off because of a variety of events last week, but huge number of viewership as compared to previous. So hopefully you'll all show up again this week.
All right. Yeah.
And we'll see you again next week. That's our plan and intention. So to then, shalom, Mike.
God willing.